Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for something very special. Live from Messianic, Delaware this time. We hope you enjoyed today's message. Thank you so much. It's going to take me just a moment to get started and everything set up because we're broadcasting not only on your favorite podcast platform, but also doing Facebook Live at the same time. Give me just a second and we will get started. Get all the technology that we've got here together, and we will hopefully be ready to go here in about a second or two. Welcome to, believe it or not, Messianic Delaware tonight, and that's going to be on my page, not Give God Nani's page tonight. So as people are starting to, hopefully, there's Daryl's watching, so everybody goes out there.
Hi, Daryl.
Glad to see you. As people are starting to gather in here and get ready for this, let me start by, because this is our first time we've done this on my personal page, letting everybody know what Messianic Delaware is, first of all, and what it is a fellowship of Messianic believers. And if you want to know what that is, people who...
Hi, Pam.
Hi, Pam. People who still believe in Jesus, in Yeshua, but we look at him through not his Greek roots, but through the Hebrew roots, because he was... Jewish. He didn't practice Judaism, the religion of Judaism, but he was from the tribe of Judah. So that's where we look from. Some people started to call this Hebrew roots because there is some goofiness going on in the Messianic world, as well as all the other churches and that kind of stuff. But that's where we started. Messianic Delaware began about 5 years ago now.
Hi, Tony.
And Daryl and Carl and I were the instigators. It happened after Bethlehem dissolved, after Ben Casuto passed on. Mm-hmm. And we were looking to reorganize, regroup, and bring something else together. What we were actually hoping for with Messianic Delaware originally was that we would bring people together and we would, teach and let them go out into their own communities and teach, mm-hmm. and hopefully spread the word and that kind of thing. So as we're hopefully still doing that.
Yeah.
Messianic Delaware doesn't, we are a fellowship. We're not a church, right? We don't, if you wanted to write a check to us, you can't do it.
No.
Because we don't take any money.
Right.
We are a Bible study fellowship. That's all we do. And because of that, we encourage you to go out on your own and do that. So hopefully that made sense. Did I explain that right? Mm-hmm. Okay. If you want to know more, there is a website, messianicdelaware.org. It may come up as Carl Bartel or something like that because he's the one that puts all that together. Mm-hmm. So that's there. Don't be afraid of that. Just click on it. All of our teachings for the last few years are on there. So I'm not the only one that does this. We have a lot of very well qualified teachers, instructors, people that bring messages, mm-hmm. People that travel the globe and have been to, Egypt and Jordan and Israel and Saudi Arabia, mm-hmm. where the real Mount Sinai is. So... we have these people, we have accessibility to these people, I should say, and they come in and really do a very, very, very good job bringing different things together. Now, for the folks that are listening to me on Spreaker or they're used to seeing this show up on my Give God 90 page, that is mine and I's thing. We started that several years ago, and that all came about from a conversation with a rabbi, and that's how that got started.
Hi, Haley. Hi, Wes. Thanks for joining.
Hi, guys. Welcome. So, we all have our interests. We all have our things we do. My point of view comes from if you live the way God designed you to live, it will improve your life. Pam's another really wonderful teacher here. Hey, Robin's here too. Pam comes from, let's look at the language and go back as far to the original language as we can get, so we can see exactly what the original meaning, the original content is. That's the way she comes at this. Right. Other people come at it different ways, and it just kind of works.
And we have a beginning Hebrew teacher.
We do have a beginning Hebrew teacher. Joni's she is very, very good at getting. If you want to learn the basics, now you're not going to be a fluent Hebrew speaker in 12 weeks. It's just you can't do it.
No.
I see Jay and the gang's watching too.
Hi, Jay, Carol, Tina.
But if you want to learn the basics, if you want to have a working knowledge of Hebrew, she's the one that can offer that to you. So we have a lot of really good resources to draw from here that we utilize all the time. So as people are coming in, I see, okay, that's going on too. Would you play tape that in for me? Because there's more technology in this place tonight than you would ever imagine.
Yeah, there is. There's things going everywhere.
Hey, for the people on Spreaker that can't read the Facebook things going on, Haley says, you guys look nice. I'm sitting here in my pajamas. I actually saw a Facebook meme today that was talking about the people staying at home. And it's like, they're in their pajama bottoms, but they're dressed up on top. It's kind of like a pandemic mullet, comfortable on the bottom, fancy on the top, right? So there you go. And really, I'm
not in my pajama bottoms.
No, I don't have, no. But I am going to be barefoot because it's warm in here tonight. So, kicking the shoes off. We're at the beach anyway. We're allowed to do that. But there's a lot of technology in here tonight because we are on Facebook Live. We are also on Spreaker, which takes it to all of the podcast platforms, basically. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and of course Spreaker. It's also on YouTube and some other places. So there we are. That's all up and running as far as I know. Everything's good to go. And let me check on this really, really, really quick. I'll stick something in my ear here. Going good. Oh, it's going? Okay, good. All right. So, a little bit of background for the people who may join us that don't know when they're going to see this. Oh, he's talking about Revelation. He's got to be talking about the end of the world. For you folks, let me very quickly do this rundown. I hate teaching Revelation because everybody says, oh, it's Revelation. You're talking about the end of the world. Revelation has nothing to do with the end of the world. Well, maybe a little something to do with the end of the world. Revelation has a lot more to do. Hey, there's Karen. Revelation has a lot more to do with repentance and restoration than it will ever have to do with the end of the world. I don't need Revelation to teach what's in Revelation. I can take it from Genesis in your regular Christian Bible all the way through Second Chronicles, and teach everything that's in Revelation. I don't need it. There's Deb. She's here too. Cool.
Hi, Deb.
Glad to see you.
Daryl's there with you.
Yeah, he is. I saw him.
Oh, yeah, he is at the top. I forget. So,
with all of these things going on, why am I looking at Revelation? Well, because it was time to look at it. We have, especially now, I didn't realize what was going to be going on. We're also on Facebook. Okay, cool. Oh, good. You linked that. That's cool. Thanks, Jay. I didn't realize when I started teaching this series that it was going to lead into where we're at today in the world. And I deal with a lot of people who ask questions about that. And, in Matthew chapter 24, verse 8, he says, look, this isn't the end yet. This is just the beginning. And King James says it's the beginning of sorrows.
Hi, Matthew.
Other things, other translations, I should say that it is the beginning of birth pains. If you look in the Greek, it says it's the beginning of agony. Now, if you're agonized by being at home with your family, I feel for you sometimes. I really do. But get used to it because it's going to get worse from here. Zoe, our 14-year-old granddaughter today.
Hi,
Hi, Millie. Glad to see
Wow,
you.
it's awesome to see you on here.
Our 14-year-old granddaughter today, she says, I really hate this. And I said, get used to it because it's going to get worse. There's a lot of people that have to get used to what's going on, but it's going to get worse. If you've been following and listening to the podcast that I've been doing up to this point, you'll know that I left off in Revelation chapter 19, okay? And I call Yeshua, Jesus, the fifth horseman of the apocalypse, the most important horseman of the apocalypse. And what we see there is he mounts a horse to come back to earth, right? Mm-hmm. So what goes on from there is really interesting. Do you want to read Revelation 19, verses 14 and 15?
And the armies of heaven, clothed in fine linen, white and clean, were following him on white horses. From his mouth comes a sharp sword, so that with it he may strike down the nations. And he shall rule them with an iron rod, and he treads the winepress of the furious wrath of
Elohi
Zavoit.
So what we see is it's not just him coming back, but he's followed by this huge army that's described earlier. They don't have to fight. They really don't. All they have to do is come along for the ride this time. And a lot of time people don't understand. and I don't know how to get this through to people. This is not going to be a peaceful replacement of power. You know, it's not like the elections we have in the United States where even though there's this bickering we had the last time, this isn't going to be this peaceful exchange of, let's bury the hatchet. That's not what's going to happen. But let's see what happens next. And I'm going to read this part. Revelation 19, 20 through 21. Then the beast was captured. Okay? The reason I'm reading this is because I got to stop and explain what the beast is here. John doesn't ever really explain what it is, and a lot of people have a lot of theories about what it is. It doesn't really matter because what it boils down to, John says this is a short-lived thing. He's captured. The false prophet is captured. The one who performed signs by which he deceived those who received the mark, as well as those who had worshipped his image. He says, look, these things are just going to be caught. They don't last that long. It's not like the last 2,000 years we had to put up with. They don't last that long. They were thrown into a lake of fire burning with brimstone. We're going to see that very shortly. And then the rest were killed with sword coming out of the mouth of the one riding on the horse. And the birds gorged themselves on their flesh. Like I said, this is going to be a very, very violent, I don't want to say revolution. It's not really a revolution. This is just a violent overtaking. The modern Christian churches this isn't what they're teaching. We have a lot of people out there who say, oh, I just can't wait for the day the Messiah comes and shows himself, and it's going to be wonderful. We know people like this. Guess what? They're going to be disappointed. They're going to be upset because this is going to be the most violent event in the history of the world, in the history of the universe. Everyone who stands in opposition to the creator of the universe gets struck down. It says so right there. It says, the rest were killed with a sword coming out of his mouth. He doesn't have to wield a sword. He just speaks the truth, and they're going to die. It's that simple. The birds get to feast on the flesh. Think about that. In Revelation 21:8, it says, the cowardly, the faithless, detestable, the murderers, and the sexually immoral, and the sorcerers. He has a long list of people who stand in opposition, right? It says their lot is with the lake of fire that was just mentioned. There's only one lake of fire. It's not the hell that we're taught to believe in the modern Christian church, in most modern Christian churches, I should say. There are some Christian churches out there who don't teach that, and they teach it for what it really is, but there's not that many. If you're going to one of them, bless you, because at least you're getting a good dose of truth. The thing is, all of these people that stand in opposition to the Creator, they're going to hear the truth, and they can't take it. They're going to die, and the birds are going to eat their flesh. If you want to read the first section up there.
Revelations 20, verse 1. Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, holding in his hand the key to the abyss and a great chain. There's reflection on my glasses. He seized the dragon, the ancient serpent who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years.
Well, that's kind of odd. Why'd they bind him for 1,000 years?
Why did they?
Anybody ever wonder that? Did anybody ever just say, "Oh, this is a millennial reign. Oh, isn't it great?" Did anybody ever really wonder why? You know, they had everything's open. The pit's open, obviously. They could have done away with him right there. Why wait? What is so important about waiting for this period of time? You're waiting for me to tell you. Okay. Everybody's waiting for me to tell them why. The Almighty wants only the people who are committed, the ones who are willing to stand with Him, the ones who are willing to do what it takes, the ones who are willing to finish the race, the ones who are willing to be there when everything else is said and done. Hey, Francisco's with us.
Hi, Francisco.
The way he's going to achieve that is he binds the enemy for 1,000 years. At the end of that 1,000 years, we're going to find out who's truly committed or who's just thinking they're going to be along for the ride and they're going to slip in, you know, kind of like the wedding crashers, right? Wedding Feast of the Lamb is already taking place at this point, but he's wanting to know, are you really, really with me, or do you just think you might want to be with me because it's a good idea? Because in chapters 4 and 5, John sees thrones and the people that sat upon them. They were given authority to judge. And I saw the souls who had been beheaded. Now I need to stop right here because everybody says, well, you got to get your head cut off if you want to be there. Well, you need to go back and read your Greek. He goes, even in Greek, basically this says to be cut off or to cut off with an axe. It doesn't necessarily mean to be beheaded. You can cut a tree off with an axe, right? Mm-hmm. You can, but it means to have a violent death. But it means, what the implication here is, you died violently standing for your faith. You were basically martyred. So even, I can't remember the rabbi's name, who was, he refused to give up speaking the name of the Almighty. And so what the other Pharisees did was they wrapped him in a Torah scroll and soaked it with water. And then they basically burned him at the stake, but they wanted to make sure that his death was brutal enough so that nobody else would follow in his footsteps. So it's not necessarily that they cut his head off, or you had to have your head cut off. You needed to die a violent death here so that you could be in this particular group. Now, this isn't the only group that gets in, by the way. Because of their testimony for Yeshua, because of their word of God, they had not worshipped the beast or his image, nor had they received his mark on their forehead. So that means they had to be alive at that period of time, right? Mm-hmm. Okay? So it's kind of a small group here that we're looking at. Here's the interesting part. They came to life and reigned with the Messiah for 1,000 years. But the rest of the dead didn't come to life until the 1,000 years was complete. How about that? Not many people like to talk about this. Not many people understand there's more than one resurrection. Even Paul understood this when he said, everyone is resurrected in their own order. First was the Messiah, then there was the first fruits, then there were those who belonged to the Messiah at his coming, and then there were the rest. This rest, again, means everybody else who just basically died or was killed. And we'll see what happens to them in a moment. You want to read Revelation 27?
When the 1,000 years had ended, Satan shall be released from his prison, and he shall come out to deceive the nations at the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog to gather them for the battle. The number is like the sand of the sea. And they came up on the broad plain of the earth and surrounded the camp of the
priests, the saints.
The priests and saints and the beloved city, but the fire fell from heaven and consumed them.
Okay. There's been a lot of discussion over this verse about what the four corners are. It's, oh, well, the earth is square, therefore it's flat. And that's not what it's talking about. The four corners are a figure of speech used throughout Scripture. It talks about the outer edges. It encompasses everything. There's nothing left. If you go to the four corners, there's nothing left. It's all over. It's surrounded. It encompasses the world. That's all it means. But isn't it interesting that if people talk about Gog and Magog like they're places, they're actually groups of people. You can think of them as nations, but they're coming out to say, well, we're better than you, and we're going to rule, and we're going to beat everybody. And God brings them out and surrounds Jerusalem, and there's no battle. There's no battle. He kills them all. They're just, it's over at that point. He just gets them all in one place and wipes them out. And in verse 10, the devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and brimstone where the beast and the false prophet were too. And they shall be tortured day and night forever and ever. Isn't it interesting? Now we know that, Satan's released. He gets to, go around and go, oh, won't you come, here, be on my side. I'll make you feel good for a few minutes. It's not going to last that long. Yeah. And it ain't going to be pretty. The Almighty saying, I can absolutely, weed out the good and the bad. I can find the people who are going to stand by me no matter what, and I can find the people who aren't going to stand by me no matter what. That's what all this is about. See, this isn't about the end of the world. This is about restoring what he intended from the beginning. Okay. You need to read Revelation 20, 11 and 12, because if I do it, I'm going to be here for the next 3 days.
Then I saw a great white throne, and the one seated on it. The earth and the heaven fled from his presence.
All right, stop right there. I can't. I got to do this.
So why did you ask me?
Well, because I was going to try. I was going to try and get by this part. The earth and heaven fled from his presence. We know in just a few verses that heaven and earth disappear. They're going to be remade. This is when it disappears. Now, there are people who say, oh, well, John's just getting tunnel vision here. John's not getting tunnel vision. We're in the presence of the creator of the universe at this point. And he said that at this point, there's no more heaven, there's no more earth. I'm going to deal with what I've got in front of me. And then I'm going to make it all over again. Okay, go ahead. No place was found.
But no place was found for them. And I saw the dead, and the great and the small, standing before the throne. The books were opened, and another book was opened, the book of life. And the dead were judged according to what was written in the books, according to their deeds. Just in case you're...
Okay. Here is where so many modern... We left at the same time. You were going to do that. Oh. I'm glad you did. Okay. Here is where a lot of modern Christian churches like to get hung up on. All right. They talk about being, don't you want your name written in the Lamb's Book of Life? Well, yeah, everybody does, right? The thing is, that's not the only books that are open. It says the books were open. More on that in a second. Then another book was open, which was the Book of Life. But you're judged not on if your name's written in the Book of Life. Your name's judged on what was written in the books. Now, before I really get into this was so important and so ingrained into the ancient Hebrew society. If you look at Exodus 32, chapter 32, verses 31 through about 33 or 34. Moses, this is right after the golden calf. Right after the golden calf. Moses goes back up and he says, look, these people have sinned against you. This is terrible. They've made gods of gold. I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know what Aaron was thinking. But do you think you, maybe, Lord, can find it in your heart to forgive their sins? But if you can't, you know what? I'm no better than they are. You just blot my name out of your book. Just count me with them. Take my name out of your book. I'll suffer the consequences with them. The Almighty said to Moses something so important at this point. Whoever has sinned against me, I will blot their name from my book. Whoever has sinned against me, I will blot their name from my book. What's so important about the book of life? Over and over and over, the only thing we are ever told that God holds in his right hand is us. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing. Earlier in Revelation, John sees that scroll. It's the one with the 7 seals around it. Everybody wants to say it's a title deed to the land. It's not the title deed to the land. What he's holding is the name of every person who was born from created from Adam through whoever's being born right now. That name is in that book. You have the authority to take your name from that book. Mm-hmm. You also have the authority to put it back in, if you're willing to do what it takes. The problem is, we don't have that understanding in our modern culture today. When Moses says, look, just count me with them, I'm no better than they are, he realizes, he understands what he's giving up. The Almighty says, no, Moses, anybody that sins against me, I'm taking out of my book. And then, he goes on to tell them, you go on. There will be a day when I will hold them accountable for their sin. It's coming. It's not yet, but it's coming. Mm-hmm. So, I wanted to finish up there. If we look down there a little bit farther, it talks about the people who died on ships, right? Who sank in ships. It said the sea gave up the dead. Death and Sheol gave up the dead. What do you mean? We're taught that when people die today, they either go to heaven or they go to hell, right? Mm-hmm. That's your choices. That's not what Scripture teaches. I really wish I had the time to go into it. I'm not going to take the time to go into it now because I got other things to go into, and I really, really, really want you to see what's going to happen. The thing is, they were judged according to their deeds. Everyone gets judged according to their deeds. Now, where does that come from? If we go all the way back to Ezekiel chapter 18. Wait a minute. You mean I'm going to go from Revelation to Ezekiel? If you were with me a few weeks ago, I went from Revelation to Genesis, okay? It's just that simple. If you don't have the foundation, you don't understand. If you don't build the foundation, you can't put on the roof. It's that simple. Ezekiel 18, 21 and 22 reads, if the wicked turns from his sins that he has committed and keeps my laws and does what is lawful and right, he will surely live. He will not die. None of his transgressions that he committed will be remembered because of his righteousness that he practiced. He will live. Now, remembered in this particular word can also be translated as to mention. To remember is to mention, to talk about them, to express care, desire, love for them, which is why in the Hebrew culture, the worst thing you could do is to be forgotten. Mm-hmm. That was the worst punishment that they could dish out to somebody. Was they push them out of the camp, they would leave them alone, they would never mention their name again. But guess what happens? Go ahead and read Ezekiel 18:24.
But when the righteous turns away from his righteousness and commits iniquity and does according to all the disdainable acts that the wicked man does, will he live? None of his righteous deeds that he has done will be remembered, for his trespasses that he trespassed, and for his sin that he has sinned, for them he will die.
Oh my. See, repentance is what leads to restoration. Without repentance, you don't get restoration. That's what Revelation is all about. It starts out with the letters to the 7 churches, right? Mm-hmm. And the whole thing is all about, I know what you did. I saw what you did. I know what you're doing. And I always think of the movie now, I know what you did last summer. Mm-hmm. I know what you did last summer. Here's the thing. Even back in Ezekiel, we're given this opportunity that if you were doing bad stuff and you don't want to do bad stuff and you say, I shouldn't be doing that, mm-hmm. you can turn around and do good stuff. None of the bad stuff you did will ever be mentioned. We will never speak of that again. It's still written in the books. Remember, the books, plural, that happen in Revelation is still written in the books, but we'll never speak of it again. But the problem is, if you think you're doing what's right, but you're sneaking around and you're not doing what's right, you're maybe, bless you, maybe you're going out and you're doing things, I'm sitting in church every Sunday. I'm sitting right here. I'm sitting in church every Sunday. But, yeah, it's great. I raised my hand at the right time. I put money in the plate. I'm doing all this good stuff. Guess what? If you sneak around and do something God says don't do, mm-hmm. He sees that, and none of the righteous acts will be mentioned. Because it's not what you say, it's what you do. It's the actions you display that show your character, that show who you are. Having your name written in the book, that is one thing. Taking your name out of the book, just like Moses offered to do, that is an act you don't want to do. Mm-hmm. And I used this analogy last night because I gave the people who listened to Give God 90, I gave them a little bit of a forewarning. I want you to think about this scroll that has the names written on it, this book of life. And think about the biggest thing you can think of that has all the names written on it. The biggest thing I could think of was the Vietnam Memorial Wall. But think of it bigger than that. Every name from Adam to the person who was just born. Now, leave the first couple of names, blot out the next 50. Leave a couple, blot out 5 or 10. Leave one, blot out several more, until you have maybe 5 out of every 100. Now, I don't know if that's all there is. I really don't. We're not given a percentage of people who make it. We just are told that few are going to find that narrow path that leads to the kingdom, right?
Right.
But I think that gives you a pretty good visualization. If you look at a list of names and you just see blank spaces over most of the page, that is an image that you need to understand. That's the image we need to be showing people. It's not just, do you want your name written? Mm-hmm. Do you want it to stay? Are you willing to do what it takes to stay there? Revelation 20, 14 and 15. Death and hell were thrown into the lake of fire. All hell means is the place for the dead. All right? There's not going to be any more need for death. There's not going to be any more need for a place for the dead. All right? That's no longer going to be needed. And it says that the lake of fire is the second death. When we die from this physical body, it's not a big deal. Because the skin part, the bones, mm-hmm. that we don't really need that to live, right? That's not a big deal. The soul, the spirit, what makes us us, what makes you and you, that goes on. Mm-hmm. Over and over and over again, more than a dozen times through Scripture, are we told that death is nothing more than rest, waiting for something else to happen. Sleeping in the dirt, however they describe it, that's what it is. This time, it's permanent. This time, it's nasty. This time, oh my. If your name's not found in that book, at this point, you're done. Mm-hmm. And I often, dealing with livestock so much, I always get this image of people coming down the alleyway, right? And you've got the sorter sitting on the throne, and he's picking out the ones that he knows. Think about that. As you're walking up and these people are being judged, do you go to the sheep? Do you go to the goats? Because, the sheep, they got it easy this time. The goats, they don't have it so good. And my image after that goes to a diving board.
Hi, Luke. Hi, Rebecca.
where you just dive off into that lake of fire. And that's in my mind. Your mind may have something different, but that's in my mind. Let's keep going. This is good. Complete restoration. Go ahead and read Revelation 21, 1 through wherever I stopped.
Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. I also saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. I also heard a loud voice from the throne saying,
Oh my. Oh my. John gets to see something, and we have several images in our minds, I know, about this. But what John sees is restoration, complete, total restoration. The old heaven, the old earth, it's done away with. We don't need it anymore. He just, you know what, I'm just going to burn them down. They're not important. What's important is us, the ones who are willing to do what it takes to get to this point. That's what's important. That's what all of this was put here for to start with. And I read this, and my first mind goes, there was no more sea, no more fish, no more lazy days of fishing. Oh my, it's all over, it's all done. Sorry, guys. All right, so the angel was saying, go ahead.
Behold, the dwelling of God is among men, and he shall tabernacle among them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be among them, and be their God. And he shall wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more, nor shall there be mourning, or crying, or pain any longer, for the former things have passed away.
Ooh. Now here's where things get fun. If we go back to Isaiah in chapter 65, verses 17 and 18. Behold, I create a new heaven and a new earth. Former things will not be remembered or come to mind. But be glad and rejoice forever in what I'm creating. For behold, I am creating Jerusalem for rejoicing and her people for joy. Oh, wow. Isaiah shows us exactly what John sees. Isn't that amazing? The former things won't be mentioned, won't be remembered. I know a lot of people, and here's probably where Pam's going to get a little offended when she hears this. Because we talk about, eternities for studying the Bible. I'm not sure it is. I think it's for something better. I think we got something better coming. Because if we don't remember the former things, we probably aren't going to need in the beginning, right? Because you get a new beginning. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to need in the beginning God created. We're going to get something better. We're going to get a whole new aspect, a whole new perspective, a whole new point of view on what God says is important at this point. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there who talk about heaven being floating on a cloud. It's not floating on a cloud playing a harp all day. You need to get that message get that image out of your mind. That's not what it's about. What it is about is being right here in the presence of the Almighty, in the glory that He surrounds Himself with. Okay? Everything that we know right now, all the people you know, might not be there. And chances are you're not going to remember them. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people I know that really are praying for their family, their friends, and they're saying, "Oh Lord, you've got to do something. You got to make them see." Maybe they need to change their prayer. Maybe they need to change their prayer to show them the truth, show them exactly what's going to happen. But you need to be careful when you do that, and I'll tell you why. You have got to be willing to take the responsibility for your prayer. Seriously, you've really got to be willing to take the responsibility, because if you ask for something and it is in the Almighty's will to give it to you, it might not be what you think it should have been. Your idea might not be the way He wants it to come out. So don't be surprised if that happens. All right, keep going.
Then the angel showed me a river of the water of life, bright as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb down the middle of the city street. On either side of the river was a tree of life, bearing 12 kinds of fruit, yielding its fruit each month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. No longer will there be any curse. The throne of God and of the Lamb shall be in the city, and his servants shall serve him. They shall see his face, and his name shall be on their foreheads. Night shall be no more. People will have no need for lamplight or sunlight, for Adonai Elohim will shine on them, and they shall reign forever and ever.
All right, now there's a phrase in here that always confused me. It just didn't make any sense. There's not going to be any more death, no more dying, no more suffering, but the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. And that just always bugged me. And I looked at it and looked at it and looked at it, and I thought, what in the world can this mean? Well, it's not in the sense of being healed from an injury or from an offense, but it's bringing everyone together, because the nations here aren't separate countries. It's people and people groups. What we're doing is bringing everyone together so that they're, to put it biblically, all in one accord, just like they were in Acts chapter 2. They were all in one little Honda Accord, huddled all in there waiting for the Holy Spirit, right?
No.
Hey, it works for some people. But they were all right there. They were all of the same mind. They all had... Now, that doesn't mean that everybody, how do I want to say this? That doesn't mean that they didn't have different ideas. They didn't have different strengths, and some people were better at one thing than something else. What it meant was they all had one mission in mind. You take a group who wants to accomplish something. Mm-hmm. If they all don't want to see the end result, they're not going to get there. Everybody here, those leaves are bringing these people together. What they're for is to make sure that they stay centered, they stay focused. They actually understand what their purpose and what their design is at that point. Okay? That's what that means. Before we close this out, I always record basically it's a PowerPoint, and that's what we're using here is the PowerPoint that I do, because it helps keep me on track. Because if I don't use these...
He'll be on so far gone down a rabbit trail, he'll never find his way back.
Oh, I'll find my way back. It just might take me 3 years to do it.
True.
If I'd have went into the depth that I wanted to go into to do this...
We'd be here till midnight, at least.
What are you doing Monday? Seriously, that's how much information there is here. You don't have to get it all from Revelation. You can get it from, Genesis through 2 Chronicles. The thing is, I recorded this. It takes about 30 or 40 minutes for me to go through it in the recording. If you want to see the slides we're doing, it's going to be up on MessianicDelaware.org's website. It'll be on my YouTube page. wherever you can get it and see that. Whenever we go to funerals, there's a psalm that is typically read, and it's Psalm 23. Most people think of this as, oh, David, as I walk through the valley of the shadow. They don't realize how much of a victory march this psalm is. David was one of the greatest prophets there is. Mm-hmm. Psalm 23, verse 6. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. But it's what comes after that. I will dwell in the house of Jehovah forever. I will dwell in the house of Jehovah forever. How was David able to see all of this? He knew what was coming. He absolutely understood it. He grasped it. He had a feel for it. He could write songs about it. And we have such a hard time today trying to figure it out. And the reason we have such a hard time today trying to figure it out really comes down to our traditions, our church doctrines. We want it to be what we want it to be, instead of reading it and actually going, you know what? This actually makes sense if you read what's there. Mm-hmm. David understood the New Jerusalem was actually the house of the Almighty, and he was going to provide it to us for a place to live. He says, I will dwell in his house forever. That's all he needed to know. Really, that's all we need to know. But we've got to be willing to do what it takes to get there. Mm-hmm. And over and over and over and over again, we're told if we hear his voice and we do what he tells us to do. Last night I read part of Deuteronomy 28. It says, look, even all those bad plagues that affected Egypt, even the ones that aren't here that you don't know anything about yet, they're not going to hurt you. Mm-hmm. I've mentioned before, that during the Dark Ages, when the Black Plague was running rampant through Europe, they were blaming the Jews because the Jews weren't dying as fast as everybody else. Mm-hmm. Because the Jews were smart enough to go, we need to wash our hands and we need to not sleep with animals. Mm-hmm. Right? It's that simple. They were simple and they were aware enough of God's instructions. God says, keep some things separate so the fleas don't bite you. Mm-hmm. This is where the plague comes from.
Because the poor people were sleeping with the animals to stay warm.
Right. I mean, that's what was going on.
So, yeah.
So, and there was a news story yesterday or today that someone, I think they were in New York, wouldn't allow, I think it was a Hasidic Jewish person into his store because he blamed coronavirus on him. Because you guys aren't getting sick. Well, yeah, they are. I think in New York that was the first group that was quarantined. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, they are. They're not, this ain't their fault.
No.
You want to know whose fault it was, go back to Adam and Eve. Okay, that's where it started. But the thing is, all you have to do to, prevention is the best part of it. Mm-hmm. If you want to prevent it,
wash your hands, don't touch your face.
Live the way God designed you to live.
The way God designed you
it's
to live.
That simple. If you live the way God designed you to live, you're well on your way to prevention. And even if you do happen to have it, or get it, catch it, however you want to say that, it's not going to be as bad. You may die from it. But guess what? It's a whole lot easier if you have that hope in the resurrection and living in the house of the Almighty forever than it is for somebody who doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Knowing that your name is in that book.
Knowing that your name is in the book. Mm-hmm. Because that's what it takes. That's what we need to do. That's what we got to watch out for. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Shabbat Shalom,
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. There's a lot of people that don't speak Hebrew, so I'm going to skip the Hebrew part of this, but I'm going to read the Aaronic benediction. God went to Moses and said, tell Aaron to put my name on my people. And Aaron stepped out there, and he did. And what I'm going to say now, this is my translation.
Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer. Good to see you. This is my translation. And many of you are familiar with it because it's typically done at the end of just about every church service I've ever been to. My translation reads this way: May Jehovah bless you and guard you. May Jehovah lift his eyes toward you and offer you an abundance of grace. May the light of Jehovah's face shine brightly on you and remove all of the chaos, all the drama, all of the garbage that causes you unrest. Thank you for joining us, everyone. We certainly do appreciate it. If you have any questions about Messianic Delaware, let me know. I'll try to answer them. Go to the website, check it out. All of our teachings are on there.
And it was great seeing, having people see us that we haven't actually seen in years.
Really. I mean, it was really, really nice for all of you folks to join us and tune in and all that good stuff. We hope you have a blessed week. Don't forget to stay safe out there, everybody. Thank you.
Good evening.